You heard us talking about the contract for London police officers. That was on AM980 yesterday afternoon into this morning. They've got a new deal. It's going to go from 2015 to 2018 or 2019, depending on how things go. So that's obviously an interesting piece of news because we always talk about how firefighting and police salaries are linked. So if the police officers have a new deal, and it's a deal that the London Police Association has trumpeted as one of the best for taxpayers around, what does that mean for firefighters? Are they going to have to agree to a similar deal? Let's get an update on that situation because I know they're in arbitration right now. So John Hassan, who is the president of the London Professional Firefighters Association, he joins us on the line for that conversation. John, good morning. Thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, no problem, Craig. Anytime.
So we get the police deal yesterday, and I know that there are a lot of people that emailed us and the station and said, well, okay, we've got this deal for the police. What impact does that have on the deal for firefighters we've been hearing about? You tell us. Is there anything that changes here because of what was announced yesterday?
Well, unfortunately, our reality is that those particular bargaining years, 15, 16, 17, and 18, are likely not going to start until sometime in 2017. Our current reality is we've had 30 days of hearings on our 2011 through the end of 2014 contracts. That's 30 days already, with 17 more booked into the end of next spring. And it's just kind of funny, in preparation for the show, I kind of went through, some of the things that I've been looking at. And I remember the day we started was Thursday, August 22nd in 2013. And the reason I know that is because I got an email from Art Zudema, who said, hey, John, I want to let you know, and this is from the email, later this morning, the corporation will be going live with a web page related to fire negotiations and a current interest arbitration. And, we've been kind of talking back and forth for about a year at that point. And he says, we're going to have a website. And the reason for the website is, given that we're starting interest arbitration, we want the process to be transparent to all. And he also had some other comments about the LPFFA response to some Globe and Mail articles. And I'm thinking, well, it's great that, Art wants to be transparent, yet to date, we've never, ever been able to get the city to release how much this is costing the citizens of London, how much they're paying in legal fees. I know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars I've been spending of my members' money in order to try to get this deal done, yet not a word, despite promising transparency to all, have they come up with how much this is costing. So will the police deal affect what happens when we go to the table probably 2 years from now? To go back in time 2 years, I really don't know. We're just really dealing with the reality of 47 days of contract arbitration just to maintain what's been freely negotiated or awarded in like municipalities. And I'm looking at, what a London firefighter makes as of today. It's $85,503. And I look at our neighbors. A Woodstock firefighter makes just over $90,000. St. Thomas firefighter just over $90,000. Windsor firefighter just over $90,000. Stratford 92, Vaughan 90, Sarnia 93, Kitchener 90, Guelph 90, Waterloo 90, Cambridge 90, Sudbury 90, Barrie 90, Oakville 91, Brampton 90 and change. So,
is that an average or is that a starting number?
These are what a first-class firefighter tops out at after 4 years or 5,
okay,
depending on the municipality. So these are the normative rates that are in force right now in these other communities. Yet a London firefighter is around $5,000 behind, and that's what we believe will be a multi-million-dollar arbitration process is just trying to achieve. It's just trying to keep us on track with what everybody else has freely negotiated or been awarded. And, it's great that the police were able to come to a deal. Their priorities going into this were always work-life balance, and I believe they made a major change in their schedule, so good for them. But I think the big question for us is, why are we being treated so differently? And the biggest question is, how much has this mayor and this council, because they now own the entire process, how much have they spent, and how much more are they willing to spend just to prevent a London firefighter from making the same as people in comparable municipalities? And some of those I named off are quite a bit smaller than London.
And I get that that's the comparable, and that's what's going to be used in the arbitration process and things along those lines. But I'm sure that there are a lot of Londoners that would hear those are the numbers, and some of these other municipalities, what the numbers are here in London, say, hey, that's a really, really good way to make a living. So maybe the problem isn't so much that your group isn't catching up so much as those other groups are moving too fast.
Well, I mean, that's the reality. That's what people in those communities have said. This is what we can afford. And I look at, my tax chart that the city had on their website from 2013, and it says your entire fire service, that's much more than a fire fund, that's everything we do, is 80 cents a day to the average taxpayer. And I also, things I've handed out during the last election to those who want to get in office, I've got a 1998 property tax bill and one from 2014. I look at the municipal pie, and it says, in 1998, the little municipal pie chart says for protection, I think that's fire, police, EMS, and things that they put in the protection category, it said it was 29.57% of the overall budget. And I keep hearing about these unsustainable numbers, and, we just can't keep this going on. And I look at my 2014, and it says protect the services 31%. So the city's quite a bit bigger than it was in 1998, and we have a lot more service to provide. I think we've got at least 3 or 4 more stations, and I suspect police, have more officers and more programs. We're running more programs as well. So we've gone from 29.57, and these are all city documents, up to 31%. And at the end of the day, by the end of this contract, we're looking a little over 80 cents a day for the average household, not the average person, the average household for fire protection. That's to get really high quality. Remember, in fire protection, it's technical rescue, confined space rescue, water rescue, hazmat, your fire prevention, your fire inspections, that's keeping the trucks on the road, that's training the firefighters, that's all the administrative work that goes into it. I think that's an incredible value. And to spend potentially millions of dollars just to achieve status quo, again, we're looking for just what everybody else has. To me, it's insane, and that number ought to be put out from Mr. Zudema. We all know how much of a font of information he was during the Keepy strike, but you know what? He promised transparency. He promised it to me, and he said it was going to be transparent for everybody. So this current council, I think, will be finishing up our process around the time the next election comes, and they're going to inherit this entire cost. And we tried to kind of derail this by offering up mediation to the current mayor back in the spring, and he wanted nothing to do with it. So here's a guy that all through the Keepy strike said we got to have a locally made deal, wouldn't let them go to arbitration, yet we keep being pushed off with 17 more days of hearings on top of the 30 we've already done. There's something going on here, and it's unfortunate that we're being treated this way. Again, it's good that the police were able to once again achieve a deal, because we're just trying to mimic what they were able to negotiate for the 2011 through 2014 bargaining realm. But it seems impossible for us to do so.
I talked to Rick Robson yesterday, and he said that negotiation, the one for the previous contract, the one that the police just finished up, was far more difficult than the one they just did. Right. So I don't know if basically the negotiations are more difficult back then, or what was going on, but he said that round of negotiations was far more difficult than this one. Do you still think that you're being picked on, despite the fact that...
Well, they made significant increases. I don't believe they gave up anything, and they maintained comparable money to other police forces, just as we try to do with comparable fire departments and our local police. So you'd have to look at the amount of time it took for them to go into bargaining and come out. I know they were possibly headed to arbitration, but at the end of the day, there seemed to be a will to make a deal with them, whereas with us, we're not asking for anything extraordinary. Nothing at all. There's, I think, one outside-the-box change, and that's to our prevention division, where they would actually like a compressed work week so they can work longer hours and give more service to the public, something that seemed to come up in the Keepy strike, and the city was dead set against it. So outside of that, most of what we're looking for, in fact, all of what we're looking for, is very normative. It's not like what the police are doing right now, where they want a wholesale change in their schedule for the uniform division. I just can't understand why we, unlike most other people in the city, are singled out, and we're now going into an incredible number of days for a contract.
Well, maybe part of the difference, and you tell me if you think this is the difference, but the negotiation here is with the Police Services Board, for the police officers, and with you it's directly with city negotiators. Do you think that has made a difference at all, or from your perspective, is that altered?
If I was a betting man, I'm pretty sure that Rick this time around probably didn't have anybody from City Hall at the table, and perhaps they are able to make a deal. I sometimes wonder how city managers in London are compensated. It seems like every time they can, scrape a layer of skin off an employee and throw a couple more bucks into the city coffers, they seem to be rewarded for that. I mean, maybe that's just their motivation. I don't really know, but I know that 47 days for a firefighter contract arbitration, it's never happened that I know of, and I hope it never happens again, but something needs to be looked at, and I think the biggest thing is people should start to look at how much is this costing the city. Where are we going to end up at the end of it all? Like, what's a reasonable expectation of getting something outside the norm on the city side? I think it's very low. And why isn't Mr. Zudema being transparent with the costs? Why isn't a city council that mostly ran on transparency and letting the public know what we're doing, not asking for these costs and not letting people in their wards know this is how much we're spending on this, and putting out the true cost of what their fire service costs? I mean, it's 80 cents a day. You get a lot for that, and people quite often don't realize that.
Is the system here part of the problem? I know that there are a lot of people that say, hey, the arbitration system is what's led to the increasing salaries for firefighters and police officers and the like. Is the system part of the problem from your end, though? Just the way that it's set up and the way that arbitration works?
So the way arbitration works is when you reach an impasse, I mean, you can't reach a deal, so you're asking a neutral third party that both people select to come in and try and replicate what should have happened in bargaining. So it's a three-person panel. They pick a rep, we pick a rep. Together we pick the neutral arbitrator. We put on our case, and that three-person panel, with the arbitrator being the big dog, says, hey, this is what should have happened in bargaining. You can't make a deal. I'm now going to impose that deal on you. So each side has equal opportunity to put forward their best case. I don't know that that's a perfect system. I don't know that's an imperfect system. It's not really weighted in anybody's favor, and arbitrators are given clear direction as to what they need to consider.
Well, it's certainly, I can understand the frustration from your end. I just want to make sure that I've got this right as far as the timeline goes here. We've got to find a deal that that essentially makes up for what's gone on between 2011 and 2014, right? This board only has jurisdiction until the end of 2014. The city would not agree to give them jurisdiction beyond that. So there's going to be retroactive pay here regardless? There will be. Okay. So, I'm assuming there will be. We've already got a couple of interim increases. That's what brought us up to $85,000. So at the start of this, the city offered no money. So if the city got what they wanted, there would be a $10,000 wage gap between a first-class police constable in London and a first-class firefighter. And that would have put London firefighters, $10,000 behind most communities in this area. So we've got to do that. And then there's the whole thing about 2015 through whenever we get a deal till next. Well, it looks like our local police are still through to 18. Right. They've got that unique reopener. They've kind of, back-ended or back